We're about to start. This is the last session, and as you know, because Korzybski was concerned with time, and time seems to be essential to our last panel of this symposium. It's a crucial attribute, I think, this time around, especially because we've got several presenters. I guess this could be considered a high-density panel. So we're going to get right to it, and each presenter has about 12 minutes. I'll give you the signs over there. And our first presentation is The Language of Skin. It's 4 ideas about media, culture, and music. Bubble.
Okay, good morning. I said good morning.
Good morning.
I do that. I have to do that with my students. Okay. My presentation, I will outline 3 basic ideas about music, media, and the communication environment. Originally, I intended to do 4, but in the interest of time, I reduced the number to just 3. I hope you're not too disappointed. Okay. Well. Now, my first idea about music is that all music, from the simplest forms of music making to the most complex forms of music making, is mediated by some form of technique and technology. It's a pretty simple idea, but don't be so quick to walk around it. Although we seldom stop to think of it, music is a technique and a technology of creating, ordering, storing, remembering, and sharing sound. From the rhythmic clapping of hands to the sophisticated coordination of a symphonic orchestra, all music making is a form of mediated communication. If we miss this point, we miss the most basic idea about music. And as we review how these techniques and technologies of music making have evolved over the many millennia of our existence, we can discern at least 4 stages of music development. At what I call level 1 music technology, music technology begins with the simple manipulation of found objects and exploration of the sonic possibilities of the human body. It's helpful to remember that once upon a time, there were no instruments. There were no string instruments, no flutes, no drums. They had yet to be invented. Singing had no lyrics, where there were no words, no poetry, no skipping reels of rhyme. The various techniques and technologies of music making with which we are all familiar, which we assume as part of our musical heritage, only evolved very slowly over long periods of time. Each innovation allowed for new ways of producing, organizing, and sharing sound. Each innovation allowed for novel ways of expressing what we felt, how we related, and who we were as human beings. I think it is in this level 1 sense that the Argentine poet and musician Atahualpa Yupanqui wrote, "Before it was an instrument, the guitar was a tree. And in him, the birds sang. The wood knew about music long before it was a guitar. In some, when we rhythmically snap our fingers, hum a tune, or tap on an object to make a sound, we are using what I'm calling level 1 music technology. If we take music technology up a notch, we arrive at level 2. Here at this level, found objects are either refined or replaced by the manufacture of instruments specifically designed for music making. Straw reeds and bones are fashioned into flutes. Animal skins are pulled over carved out trunks of wood to become drums. Shells are strung together and transformed into instruments of percussion. The discovery of ceramic technology results in the creation of ceramic drums, rattles, and flutes. The tortoise sound box on a string instrument is replaced by a crafted box carved in wood. The discovery and refinement of metals opens up to the creation of bells, chimes, and gongs. And as new technologies appear, they open new possibilities for the production and diversity of musical sound. Even more revolutionary at level 2 of music technology, music learns to sing with words. With the evolution and refinement of speech, music making is no longer dependent upon humming, expressive shouts, or the rhythmic chanting of nonsense syllables. Singing can include actual words, poetically constructed, and laden with various forms of information. Music's function as a time binder, which always existed, was exponentially expanded to the addition of speech. Knowledge that the culture deemed worthy of remembering could be put into words, shaped by musical form, where it could be more securely stored, memorized, repeated, shared, and passed on to the next generation. At level 3, a huge technological advance is made with the invention, refinement, and application of writing and musical notation. It is no longer necessary to pass on songs orally or to store them in the mind, where they are always subject to the fragility of memory and the distortions of time. The growing precision of musical notation can be understood as a device responding to the increased intricacy of information that could no longer be stored adequately in the human memory. At the same time, musical notation functioned as a technique that stimulated the creation of more intricate compositions. In the words of Peggy Cassidy, quote, "With notation came the first opportunity to store music outside of the memory, where it could be written down, contemplated, set aside, and revised. It is only with such a system that complex harmonies could be experienced, be experimented with, and performed to any great extent," end of quote. At level 4, the harnessing of electricity in the production of sound allowed music to be performed, recorded, and passed on in ways unimaginable to previous generations. Electric instruments, microphones, amplifiers, audio recordings, cinema, radio, television, YouTube videos, mega concerts, and so on, all profoundly redefined what music was and what music could be. The hybridization of electricity with sound even made it possible for the masses to experience music created by musicians with whom they did not share a physical co-presence. There's something magical in all of this, for even after death, not only does the music live on, but the musicians do as well. In the world of electronic mediation, Elvis, Aretha Franklin, Frank Sinatra, Sam Cooke, Billie Holiday, and John Lennon are still very much alive and with us. And this brings me to my second idea. Like the first idea, this is not a novel one, but is one that cuts to the very core of media ecology. The application of electronic forms of technology to music has had a profound effect on how we experience and conceptualize music. One of the many consequences was the transformation of music from a practice that was an oral experience freely shared with others into a commercial transaction dependent upon the infusion of huge amounts of money and the creation of several degrees of separation between the audience and the performer. This is a very bizarre and unprecedented development. One could almost follow the bouncing ball of the American music experience as it moves left to right across the page, from singing as a community pastime freely enjoyed to a music experience that had become a massive industry. In assessing the social, emotional, and psychological effects of this shift, even the most optimistic among us must admit that it comes to us as something of a mixed blessing. No doubt the advantages are enormous. The electronic mediation of music has allowed us to hear music wherever we want, whenever we want, with whomever we want, and however we want. We have immediate access to the best of the best. We are no longer dependent upon the limitations of the local amateur musician or a special occasion to hear the music or the parochial borders of our acoustic environment. At the same time, however, electronically mediated music casts us in the role as audience, not as co-creators in a communal practice that is old as humanity itself. Many years ago, Lewis Mumford made an important observation relevant to our discussion. Quote, "The very growth of mechanical facilities has given people a false idea of technological perfectionism, so that unless they can compete with the products of the machine, or with those with professional training qualifies them for such a public appearance, they are all too ready to take a back seat." End quote. In other words, we are being marginalized and displaced by the perfection provided so easily by the electronic mediation of music. And this brings me to my third and final idea. We are so acculturated and so accustomed to the practices of the electronic music environment that it becomes difficult to imagine experiencing music in any other way. I would advocate, therefore, for the creation and support of oral forms of musical interaction that could offset some of the influence of electronic media. I say this not because electronic media is bad, but because it is so overpowering and so dominant. There are, of course, many places where one could cultivate the oral experience of music, but I will suggest as openers that a viable possibility is with children. I say this for a number of reasons. First of all, children, especially small children, quite naturally like to sing, dance, and move. Children do not talk or move the way adults do. They sing out melodic phrases, they jump up and down, they spin across the field, doing cartwheels and dancing. Why not take advantage of this natural tendency in children? Whereas adults often feel inhibited by the act of singing in public, children engage in it openly and freely. Singing on a regular basis with children reinforces the habit of singing while eliminating the shame that's often attached to it as we grow older. Cultivating singing at a young age allows children an opportunity to develop a wide repertoire of singable songs that can be shared with others and steadily expanded through the course of their lives. Secondly, singing is very much a learning tool that helps to establish a foundation for higher forms of knowledge and an easier adaptation to the demands of schooling. Singing promotes group process, focused attention, social interaction, and the development of memory. At the same time, learning songs from other times and other places expands our exposure to diverse generations and cultures. Singing by its very nature places us in a community experience where we can collectively participate in a shared activity and be creators of an art form and not mere consumers of it. And third, and most important, singing brings joy. A room filled with happy children who sing, smile, and laugh make it much easier and much more pleasant for an instructor to reach, teach, and be with for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 10 months a year. Have a little pity on teachers, all right? And in conclusion, I leave you with the words of the eminent British conductor, Sir Thomas Beecham, who ridiculed the narrow-mindedness of the academic critics who populated the environment in which he lived and created music. A musicologist, he writes, is someone who can read music but can't hear it. Right. To Beecham's words, I would only add that a mediacologist is someone who can indeed hear music, but if he or she is truly a mediacologist, also understands that music is more than just a sonic object. Music and the ways in which it is mediated and experienced constitutes an environment that cultivates particular behaviors, molds assumptions, stimulates emotions, and forms deeply ingrained habits of mind, body, and soul. As educators and media ecologists, we have the responsibility to consider alternative ways to counterbalance the electronic music environment. Okay, thank you.